Well, election day is here, and many people are going to go out to the polls in whatever city, state they live in, and cast their vote to see whether or not they want to have a boardroom executive who will slowly erode liberty away from them, expanding the size of the federal government and feigning the fact that he does want to be a libertarian, or an ancient, doddering old fool who is going to promptly die in office, giving the reins over to a prosecutor who wants to take liberty and treat it like Lenny does to small animals in the Book of Mice and Men. So we'll talk a little bit about what's happening there. New Jersey has opened up a probe into what happened on the Garden City Parkway. Lost my train of thought there. So we'll talk a bit about what's happening there. A terror attack has jumped up in Austria. So we'll talk a bit about what's going on there. And Twitter is slapping warning labels on everything because everything's got to have a warning label now. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, folks, and welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. We've got a little bit of stuff to get to today, but the big news of the day, of course, is the fact that it is Election Day, which means that, as I said, we're going to go out there and see if we vote for the cutthroat corporate boardroom guy or the doddering old Alzheimer's patient that really shouldn't even be on the ballot to begin with. Which means, of course, we're going to go and decide whether we're going to vote for the corporate boardroom cutthroat or the corrupt police officer from California. So we'll talk a bit about that there. We've got a bunch of other stuff to get to today. But before we get into any of this, head on over to freedomscoop.com. Freedomscoop.com is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. We carry great shows such as the R-Rated Conservative, the Generational Gap, the Freckles and Brit Show. We also carry the Daily Ignoramus and the Breakdown with Birkenhoff. A bunch of great shows. Come on over there and help us out. Pick up some of our swag and help us support great creators. All right, looking at the stocks here, which are surprising given the fact that nobody knows what's going to happen today, and everybody thinks that they know what's going to happen today, but nobody really has any idea what's going on here. The markets, or at least the Dow, was up 423 and a half points for yesterday, 1.6%. I don't know where they're pulling these numbers out of, except for the fact that people are finally looking at it and seeing, oh my God, it's finally over. Maybe they've been overpromised one candidate or the other, and we'll talk a little bit about what the numbers mean here, but we'll be talking a lot more numbers later, so I don't want to get into a whole lot of numbers talk with this, because we've got 10 hours to do that later on today, and I do hope you'll join me for that, because otherwise it's just me talking into the golden Edsblog Productions microphone for 10 hours, and nobody wants that. So let's see what the investors have to say about this. Starting with Investors Business Daily, which for whatever reason unloaded while I was sitting here waiting. Dow Jones Futures signal election 2020 stock market rally as Trump versus Biden race ends, from Ed Carson. Dow Jones Futures and S&P 500 futures jumped early Tuesday, while Nasdaq futures rose modestly with a market correction in force. A new stock market rally attempt is underway with election 2020 finally here, with the latest IBD TIPP Trump versus Biden poll showing a tighter race. PayPal stock, SolarEdge Technologies, Freshpet, Jazz Pharmaceuticals, and Apple iPhone supplier Skyworks Solutions and Cirrus Logic reported earnings after the close, while online furniture retailer Wayfair posted results early on Tuesday after they got their new pricing in for the kids that they're selling. But that's just a conspiracy theory and nothing to see here. Despite some NASDAQ wobbles, Monday's stock market action was fine just ahead of Election Day. This marks 1 day of a stock market rally attempt. For now, it's still a stock correction. Investors should remain largely on the sidelines for now, waiting for a follow-through day to confirm a market rally. Dow Jones Giants Apple stock and Microsoft edged lower, pairing intraday losses of around 1%. Amazon fell 1%, but its worst levels. Zoom Video fell 1.7% to just above its 50-day line, extending a recent retreat for many stay-at-home plays despite soaring coronavirus cases. Meanwhile, several chip names, including Taiwan Semiconductor and Teradyne, rose closer to buy points. Chinese e-commerce plays such as JD.com moved higher. Chinese EV plays NIO, Xpeng Motors, and Li Auto surged on strong October sales. You must buy state-owned vehicles. You may not buy anything else from out of the country. We put stocks up. You don't worry about that. Microsoft stock is on the IBD leaderboard. Taiwan Semiconductor stock is on Swing Trader. Microsoft and PayPal are on the IBD long-term leaders list. Amazon, PayPal, Teradyne, Taiwan Semiconductor are on the IBD 50 list. A little bit on the pre-election. With the stock market in a correction as of Friday's close, one good day isn't going to signal a new uptrend. Coming up on the cusp of elections, it's hard to make any meaning from Monday's stock market action or Tuesday's. Election 2020 outcomes are still unclear while Joe Biden holds a narrow lead in the latest IBD TIPP Trump versus Biden poll. President Trump could still pull out a win. Meanwhile, the Senate's fate is even less clear, with several too close to call races. So election 2020 uncertainty could last beyond Tuesday, perhaps even into 2021. For the futures, Dow futures rose 1.5% versus fair value. S&P 500 futures climbed 1.15%. Nasdaq 100 futures advanced 0.5% off morning highs. Remember, pre-market action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. On Monday, futures pointed to strong gains that day, and while Dow Industrials did have a solid day, the Nasdaq had an up and down session, only closing higher with it says furry. So it's one of those weird cosplayers that dresses up as animals, and not the fury that I think that our author intended to write there. Yeah, it actually does say furry on that one. Alright, I would say let's keep going, but it does appear that Chrome has stopped momentarily. Oh, this could suck. There it goes. Let's get rid of that. PayPal's in the description, folks. New computer fun. From CNBC, Dow futures rise more than 400 points on U.S. election day from Fred Imbert and Maggie Fitzgerald. U.S. stock futures rose sharply early Tuesday, as investors hoped a clear winner would emerge from the U.S. presidential election and a delayed or contested result would be avoided. Dow Jones Industrial Averages traded 436 points higher, or 1.7%. S&P 500 futures gained 1.4%, and Nasdaq 100 futures advanced 0.7%. Ultimately, the markets want clarity, and the main threat to risk assets this week is the emergence of a contested election. So if races are tight enough for campaigns to sue, to halt, or extend recounts, expect a reversal of this morning's rally, Tom Essay, founder of the Sevens Report, wrote in a note. And that will be something to watch as well, because as we see the results coming in and see who's too close to call, we're going to start to see the stock market and the futures go one way or the other. Tomorrow is going to be an interesting day, looking at what the futures and the stocks look like as we come into this. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on this one here because they're saying a lot of the same things that I said in the last article here. Heading into Tuesday's vote, former Vice President Joe Biden held a lead in national polling over President Trump. The former Vice President earned 52% of support from registered voters to 42% for the president, according to an NBC News Wall Street Journal poll from Sunday. In swing states, where the election will be decided, polling averages are tighter than the national polls, which we all know here, and the polls were wrong the last time, so I have no reason to believe that they're right this time. And I have no way to even sit down and predict what could possibly happen from this. And that's why we're going to sit down and watch this all day, all afternoon and into the night, to see what's going on. And I've got a great panel of guests that have agreed to come on and help out for 10 to 30 minutes at a time, just coming in and getting their takes on there, what they think is going to happen, and what they hope to happen. So we'll see that. I'm doing a lot of self-promo for this big live stream on this particular stream, but that's because I want you guys to be there. Let's keep going. Starting off today with a little bit of news about how people are reacting to things, starting with Terra. Please do not confuse your half-assed research on the internet forums with my graduate degree in political science. Where to begin on that? Where to begin? I mean, Clint over from Liberty Lock Pod said 6 years of college have left you broken, which is absolutely true off of this here. There is no reason to come up and tell everyone that you have a graduate degree in politics when all you really have to do is read the Constitution and understand it. It doesn't even take a constitutional law scholar to tell you what's in the Constitution. The founders made it easy so people would know what it was the government could and couldn't do and how to do it. Now, yes, we do have cases that come up to the Supreme Court to decide the constitutionality because I'm a living document, but for the most part, the Constitution was meant to be easy. So I don't care about your graduate degree in political science, your half-assed little venture into drinking, smoking a bunch of weed, and fucking everybody in the fraternity house, and maybe the sorority house too, who knows, versus me, who had to work and read and learn everything I could to come out and learn probably more than you did. So I just wanted to have a little bit of fun with that to start with. Going into Fox. Psychiatrist featured on CNN, MSNBC praises Hitler in a tweet attacking Trump. From Joseph A. Wolfzone. Outspoken psychiatrist Dr. Brandy X. Lee raised eyebrows on Monday when she criticized President Trump by complimenting Adolf Hitler in a series of Twitter posts. Lee, a psychiatrist at the Yale School of Medicine's Law and Psychiatry Division, has previously diagnosed Trump with various psychological ailments from afar, but outdid herself with a bizarre attempt at a history lesson in an attempt to compare the incumbent Republican to the ruthless Nazi dictator. That's not really a bizarre attempt. We've been hearing it for 5 fucking years at this point. This is just old hat at this point. Oh, if you have an R next to your name, oh, you're a Nazi. Christ, we've been hearing that for 60 years in and of itself. Donald Trump is not Adolf Hitler, Lee began. At least Hitler improved the daily life of his followers, had discipline, and required more of himself to gain the respect of his followers. Even with the same pathology, there are varying degrees of competence. So, Bandy X. Lee is not only saying Trump is Hitler, he's saying Trump is worse than Hitler because Hitler had the respect of people. Yes, that actually happened. This tweet has since been deleted off of this, but enough people have come up and screenshotted it so we can still see the tweet. Lee, who has appeared on CNN and MSNBC, later deleted the tweet amid backlash, but stopped short of offering an apology. Okay, I've taken it down since it's upset so many people and was not provoking. Thought but the opposite, she wrote. Of note, my statement was about how little Donald Trump believes he needs to retain his followership, not to minimize Adolf Hitler's atrocities. If we cannot look at parallels in history and learn from them, we are truly poised to repeat it, Lee went on. I say so in heartbreak for the 11 million lives lost. Their minimization, currently we're looking at 7 billion at risk, without exaggeration, if we soberly thought about it. Yes, Trump is going to kill the whole fucking world in 4 years. The whole world. He's he's gonna kill the whole world. 7 billion people. Jesus Christ, these people can't stop. Without exaggeration. Alright, first things first. Everybody's gonna die. All 7 billion people on the planet right now are going to die. That's a reality that I think a lot of people need to think about. Now, they're not all going to die at once, but yes, the end result of this little experiment we call life is death. Nobody gets out of it. Except for who was the saint in the Old Testament that got pulled straight up to heaven? I can't think of his name. I think it was an E name. Was it Ezekiel? I wish Stephen was here. He would know. But yes, one of the saints in the Old Testament did get pulled straight up to heaven, and he didn't have to die. But the rest of us, we're going to die. It's going to happen. So, no matter who the president is, that's not going to change anything. But to come out here and say that a worldwide humanity extinction level event is going to come from President Trump is, wow, that is just a complete exaggeration off of this. So, yes, that's actually what happened here. And Twitter had a response to this, so we will see what happened from Newsweek. A woman tweeted Hitler was better than Trump, and Twitter won't say whether she broke its rules. From Daniel Villarreal. Twitter has yet to comment on whether a now-deleted tweet stating that President Trump is worse than Nazi leader and former German Chancellor Adolf Hitler broke its rules. Donald Trump is not Adolf Hitler. At least Hitler improved the daily life of his followers, which we read all that already. Lee, who has 91,800 followers, is president of the World Mental Health Coalition, a forensic psychiatrist, and co-author of The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump, a book of essays alleging that Trump is mentally unstable, and mostly written by people who have massive Trump derangement syndrome. Her tweet may have violated Twitter's policies on hateful conduct, potentially promoting violence against Trump by comparing him to the infamous overseer of the Holocaust, which killed 11 million people. I think that might be a stretch. Just saying. The tweet was published at 10:20 a.m. Eastern Time and deleted around 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. During its brief life, numerous users accused her of praising Hitler, inaccurately insulting Trump, or being insensitive towards Jews and others killed in the Holocaust. She eventually deleted the tweet because it upset so many people and was not provoking the thought but the opposite. She wrote, "My statement was about how little Donald Trump believes he needs to retain his followers, not to minimize Adolf Hitler's atrocities." Twitter did not respond to Newsweek and their request. So, yeah, apparently people think that it broke the rules. I don't think it did. I think it was tremendously stupid, and she deserved every moment of ratio that she got out of it, but breaking the rules? No, I don't think that we can go that far on that. All right, Bridgegate 2. New Jersey officials open probe into Trump caravan on Garden State Parkway by Joseph Curl over on the Daily Wire. Supporters of President Trump snarled traffic on the Garden State Parkway in New Jersey on Sunday, and now authorities say they're investigating. State Police Colonel Patrick Callahan said investigators are reviewing videos to identify the vehicles that blocked the northbound lanes of the parkway. The New York Post reported on Monday. If we are able to get enough evidence, I would imagine that they would be issued motor vehicle summonses for obstructing traffic, he said. Colonel Callahan also said troopers who responded to the site were just doing their jobs, noting that their primary objective yesterday when that occurred was to get that traffic moving again. I never want to second-guess troopers, but to start issuing citations and summonses out there probably would have hindered the troopers' ability to get the parkway flowing north, he added. One video posted on social media showed the total gridlock, as one man said, "We shut it down, baby." And we watched that video yesterday, actually. Yep, Bridgegate 2, we're going to do it again. We are going to do it once again. Investigate, investigate, investigate. Well, I guess if that's how the Garden State wants to spend their money. I still think it was funny. Probably irresponsible. Probably blocked a lot of emergency vehicles if they would have had to get through to get somebody to a hospital somewhere or whatnot. Still funny. Still funny. All right, let's keep going here. Michigan implements new COVID restrictions that could send violators to jail after Whitmer vows to bypass court ruling. From Chris Enlow, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services has issued new coronavirus-related restrictions that would potentially punish violators with jail time. The updated restrictions come as COVID-19 cases spike worldwide, an unsurprising development as the Northern Hemisphere plunges into fall and winter is around the corner. The U.S. has set multiple records for daily new cases last week, and I call bullshit on every one of them just because of the way the numbers have been padded. Let's see. Michigan Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer has responded to the spike in cases by rolling back the state's reopening plan in parts of the state. The MDHHS issued updated guidance last Thursday requiring dine-in restaurants, barbershops and salons, tattoo shops, businesses that provide in-home services like cleaning or repairs, gyms and entertainment facilities to record the personal information of each patron or client. Boy, that's not dystopian or anything. The mandate also forces such businesses to deny services to any customer who does not provide, at a minimum, their name and phone number. Yeah, that's not dystopian. Officials claim the information will be used to aid contact tracing. The order is so broad, in fact, that it essentially applies to everyone in Michigan. Upon request, businesses, schools, and other facilities must provide names and phone numbers of individuals with possible COVID-19 exposure to MDHHS and local health departments to aid in contact tracing and case investigation efforts, the order says. Businesses or individuals who violate the order may be subject to jail time. Yep, right there. You violate the order, you may have to go to jail. Violation of this order is a misdemeanor punishable by imprisonment up not more than 6 months or a fine, not more than $200 or both, the order reads. The updated restriction also limits non-residential indoor gatherings to just 50 people, down from 500, and states, for all non-residential gatherings, if attendees are seated at tables, no more than 6 persons may share a table, and tables must be spaced a minimum of 6 feet apart. Now, that last part I can understand. I mean, yes, it sucks for the businesses because they can't get the capacity that they initially wanted to get, the number of people in there. But I can understand where they would come out and say, okay, well, this will make people feel more comfortable. I mean, if this thing is airborne, and plus it's flu season, we're not going to stop it either way. But to keep the people comfortable, to keep them coming back to the business and keep them funding the economy, I can see that. To an extent. My commercial mind sees some merit in that, but tell me your name and your phone number or you're going to jail. That's a step too far. So we will see what comes out of that and what comes up to the court out of that. Let's keep going here. From CNBC. Out-of-work Americans are outraged that Congress has yet to pass another coronavirus stimulus bill. From Alicia Adamczyk. Some days, Cheyenne Berg skips meals to ensure that she has enough food to feed her 2 young daughters. The 30-year-old lost her job in March when she got sick. Tests for COVID-19 came back negative, but she was out of work for a month and has been struggling to find part-time work while homeschooling her kids. She is living off $1,200 per month in unemployment benefits in Oregon. She has had to choose to pay rent over buying groceries for herself, she says. The internet, her kids need virtual schooling, was shut off at one point when she couldn't pay the bill. Though she declined to say which party she is supporting, she says that the stimulus negotiations have had a major impact on how she will vote this year. She is one of countless out-of-work Americans outraged that Congress has yet to pass another stimulus package. I did not choose to be unemployed, none of us did, Berg said. I have kept my faith because of the good Lord Jesus, but the selfishness and the carelessness of our government has sickened me to the core. So you'd rather have them give you other people's money. As the U.S. enters the 8th month of the coronavirus pandemic, Berg is far from the only American left wondering where her next meal will come from. Last week, about 22 million people collected unemployment benefits of some kind. Food insecurity has more than doubled as a result of the COVID-19-induced economic crisis and affects almost a quarter of all U.S. households, according to researchers at Northwestern University. If Congress fails to pass another coronavirus stimulus deal, an estimated 5 million people will exhaust all of their unemployment benefits next month, according to a letter sent by Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi last week. Millions more gig and part-time workers will lose their benefits altogether at the end of the year when the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program expires. Plus, utility and student loan bills that were deferred are all coming due soon, just as the nationwide eviction moratorium is set to expire. The Senate, House of Representatives, and White House have all given different timelines for a relief package. The Senate is currently recessed until after the election, after confirming Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell told radio host Hugh Hewitt last week that the chamber will handle the relief right at the beginning of the year, with legislation targeting towards helping struggling small businesses and hospitals. Pelosi has said she wants a deal sooner, but negotiations between House Democrats and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin have hit a wall after wall, with both sides refusing to budge on their pet stimulus issues because they all want to be the heroes. And Nancy Pelosi's bill is so stuffed with pork you can't even get around the goddamn thing anyway. President Trump, meanwhile, has told reporters last week that we will have a tremendous stimulus package immediately after the election. It'll be the greatest stimulus package, the best, the most wonderful, and it'll have my name on it, your favorite president, Donald Trump. So we will see what happens there, and yes, people are pissed off at both sides on this because, unfortunately, as Ben Shapiro likes to say, the government drove an F-150 through your house and now they're responsible to pay for it. I don't know why they're responsible to pay for it with my money, but that's the way that people have been led to believe that this is. And hopefully we can get some of these businesses open, get people back to work, so we don't have to worry about this anymore, because we had 3 years of good economy and a lot of people working in essential full employment until governors said, we have to shut down. You are not allowed to assess your own level of risk. Let's keep going. From the Associated Press, attack in Vienna targeted nightlife. Suspect had IS ties. From Philip Jenny and Frank Jordans. At least one Islamic extremist, a 20-year-old armed with an automatic rifle and a fake explosive vest, rampaged through a crowded Vienna nightlife district hours ahead of coronavirus lockdowns, leaving 4 people dead before being killed by police, Austrian authorities said on Tuesday. The suspect in Monday night's attack was identified as young Austrian North Macedonian dual citizen with a previous terror conviction for attempting to join the Islamic State extremist group in Syria. Unverified video shows the suspect, dressed in white coveralls, firing off bursts of apparently at random as he ran down the Austrian capital's cobblestone streets. Police have arrested several other people and searched 15 houses and apartments. Interior Minister Karl Nehammer told the Austrian news agency APA. 2 men and 2 women died from their injuries in the attack. Chancellor Sebastian Kurz said. He said a police officer who tried to get in the way of the attacker was shot and wounded. Another 14 people were hurt. Vienna's hospital service said 7 people were in life-threatening condition Tuesday after the attack, APA reported. Yesterday's attack was clearly an Islamic terror attack, Kurz said. It was an attack out of hatred. Hatred for our fundamental values, hatred for our way of life, hatred for our democracy, in which all people have equal rights and dignity. The attacker, identified as Kushtim Fejzulai, I think that's how you pronounce that, was sentenced to 22 months in prison in April of 2019 because he had tried to travel to Syria to join the Islamic State group. He was granted early release in December under juvenile law. So, yep, they're going into Europe once again. Not just Paris at this point, but now into Austria. And, I've been all about diversity is our strength and bring in the good ideas and let the bad ideas sink to the bottom, but my God, if they're going to keep doing this, maybe Blonde was right. I can't believe I'm actually saying that, but maybe Blonde is right. All right, let's keep going. From the Daily Wire. WHO quietly negotiated a deal that sidelines its own experts from investigating coronavirus origin in China. Report from Ryan Saavedra. The World Health Organization reportedly hit concessions that it made to Communist China about how it would conduct investigations into the origin of the coronavirus, and in doing so, may have ruined the best opportunity that researchers had into discovering the exact origin of the coronavirus. The New York Times, a former newspaper, reported that the team from the WHO arrived in Beijing in mid-February to begin investigating the origin of the coronavirus, pinpointing where viruses originated and how they jump from animals to humans can be critical at preventing future outbreaks. When the team members did not know was that they would be allowed, or not rather be allowed to investigate the source at all, despite Michael Ryan, the World Health Organization's emergency director, its pronouncements, and over the advice of its emergency committee, the organization's leadership had quietly negotiated terms that sidelines its own experts, the New York Times reported. They would not question China's initial response or even visit the live animal market in the city of Wuhan. Bat soup! Bat soup! Where the outbreak seemed to have originated. The Times noted that Communist China has impeded investigations into the origin of the pandemic and that the WHO has pushed misleading and contradictory information about the risk of the spread of symptomless carriers. Yeah, nobody knows what the fuck is going on at this point, and that's something I can say with complete confidence. They've tried to decide what's going on, they've tried to tell us what's going on, but nobody has any idea what the hell is going on with this. None whatsoever. So, that's what we're seeing up off of this here. Definitely defund the WHO at this point because they don't care. They don't care about anything except keeping themselves on the teats of several governments from around the world. Let's keep going. From Fox News. Come on, scroll up. There we go. Biden takes all 5 votes in Dixville Notch, New Hampshire, to notch first victory on election day. So we are going to go in and see all the election fun stuff that's going on with this. From David Arrow. Democratic presidential Joe Biden has won the midnight election in Dixville Notch, New Hampshire in a landslide. Biden won all 5 votes in the small New Hampshire township that historically tallies their results just after midnight. In doing so, he gained the first victory on election day. The last candidate to win a landslide there was Richard Nixon in 1960, tweeted Fox News multimedia reporter Rob Dorenzo. Hey, we've got some video to go with this. Let's have a listen. Breaking, Joe Biden wins the midnight election in Dixville Notch, New Hampshire in a landslide. I keep wanting to say North Hampshire, but it's New Hampshire.
Joe Biden. The governor, we have 4 for Sununu and 1 for Phelps.
Wish he didn't have that mask on so we could actually hear what the hell he's saying.
We have 5 votes for Joe Biden.
5 votes for Joe Biden, though. Nearby, Millsfield, roughly 12 miles to the south of Dixville Notch, also voted for president just after the stroke of midnight. President Trump won early Tuesday with 16 votes to Biden's 5. Located in a remote part of northern New Hampshire about 20 miles south of the Canadian border, Dixville Notch has been an icon of midnight voting for decades. Through the years, the media began to ritually swarm the town on election eves to watch the first tallies come in. By tradition, the election had to be held in the storied ballot room at the Balsams Resort, a hotel in the center of town. Presidential candidates from Ronald Reagan to John McCain made sure to make the trip up to voters in the Notch. So, that's our first count right there, 5-16. That's the first count that we're going to get. And Trump is currently winning. Let's see. Got a little bit more on this one here, but not very much. So we'll talk a little bit about this from the Associated Press. Let me turn the ears off and get the live chat back up here. Tradition, 2 New Hampshire towns cast votes after midnight. 2 tiny New Hampshire communities that vote for president just after the stroke of midnight on election day have cast their ballots, with one of them marking 60 years since the tradition began. The results in Dixville Notch, near the Canadian border, were a sweep for former Vice President Joe Biden, who won the town's 5 votes. In Millsfield, 12 miles to the south, President Trump won 16 votes to Biden's 5. Normally, there would be a big food spread and a lot of media crammed into a small space to watch the voting, Tom Tillotson, town moderator in Dixville Notch, said last week. But that's no longer possible because of the coronavirus pandemic. It's also hard to observe the 60th anniversary of the tradition, which started in 1960. So, unfortunately, yes, they lost a tradition off this, and that's why I wanted to touch on this one quick. Because, yeah, there's usually a huge food spread out there. They've got reporters. They've got everything out there. It's a huge to-do. And people go in there. This has got to be a huge tourist thing for these guys, too. To be able to come in and draw people from all around the country to see the first votes of every presidential election being cast. But, unfortunately, they had to sit this one out here. So, sorry to Dixville Notch. Hopefully, by 2024, we can get everything back in there, and you can enjoy having the first votes cast again. All right, let's keep going. From the Daily Wire, 7 Pennsylvania 2016 Trump counties will not count mail-in ballots until the day after the election. From Hank Berrien. As Pennsylvania Democrats, including Pennsylvania AG Josh Shapiro, have fought against the Trump administration in order to delay the counting of ballots, with the Supreme Court rulings that ballots arriving up to 3 days after Election Day can be accepted in the state, GOP may have a surprise for Democrats. 7 Pennsylvania counties that have voted for Trump in 2016 will not count mail-in ballots until the day after the election. Officials in Beaver, Cumberland, Franklin, Greene, Juniata, Mercer, and Montour stated that they would need more time to count the ballots because of lack of staffing and resources, NBC News reported. Roughly 150,000 voters in the counties asked for mail in ballots, state data reveals. Absentee. They are absentee ballots. They are not mail in ballots. Do not equate the two things. Samantha Krebs, a spokeswoman for Cumberland County, told CNN on Election Day, "We will report the poll numbers, but we have 3 days to start the canvassing of the mail-in ballots. So we took the opportunity to focus our attention on the election at the polls, and then we will switch gears to the next day. It's just a matter of getting the job done, and we are focusing our attention on the polls because they're the most important thing on Election Day." Forest County, another county Trump won in 2016, was thinking of waiting to count the mail-in ballots. Trump won Pennsylvania in 2016 by roughly 44,000 votes. Secretary of State Kathy Boockvar, a Democrat who worked for the civil rights organization Advancement Project and ran unsuccessfully for Congress in 2012, but was appointed to her present position by Pennsylvania Democrat Governor Tom Wolf, said she's pushing for Trump counties to start counting on Tuesday. She told reporters last week, "Even if you could only do part of the process to get started as early as humanly possible on Election Day, matters for every single county of any size," she stated. "I want every one of them starting it on Election Day," a CBS Pittsburgh reported. Trying hard to get the Trump counties counted on time, Boockvar said 4 counties had not applied for grant funding for more help, adding, "Please send us receipts and we're happy to give you the money." So they're going to spend a bunch of money off this year, and I mean, given the fact that mail-in ballots can be received up to 3 days after Election Day and still counted in Pennsylvania, because remember, we saw that court case get kicked back down to Pennsylvania a couple times. They tried to do it twice. There's no real reason to start counting on Election Day for the mail-in ballots. Just focus on the polls, like they said. Save a little bit of money, focus on the polls, and then start counting. All right, from CBS 3 out of Philadelphia, President Trump threatens legal action to stop the counting of Pennsylvania ballots arriving after Election Day. This is from the CBS 3 staff. President Trump and his re-election campaign are signaling that they will pursue an aggressive legal strategy to try and prevent Pennsylvania from counting mailed ballots that are received in the 3 days after the election. "I would love to see how you plan to enforce this, because you know, as well as I do, that any of those ballots that come in are going to get mixed into general population right away." No, what do you mean? How are we ever going to tell which ones are? Well, they're just all in the same box. I would love to see how you plan to enforce this, because there is no way you can do that. The matter could find its way to the Supreme Court, especially if those ballots could tip the outcome of the battleground state. The 3-day extension was ordered by Pennsylvania's top court. The Supreme Court refused to block it, but several conservative justices have indicated that they would revisit the issue after the election. Pennsylvania Secretary of State Kathy Boockvar, a Democrat, has already told local election officials to keep the late arriving ballots separate, but also to count them. She acknowledged that a post-election court fight could change that. That's interesting, because I would think that the first thing that you would want to do at that point was get them mixed into general population, as I said, as quickly as possible. So that weighs me a little bit on the other side of this as to how you could enforce this, but I've seen more expert legal minds than myself come out and say that this election is going to be rigged. So any little bit to help rig this even further, I'm not going to put this past anyone at this point. Trump's threat of legal action comes as he's been delivering a chaotic closing message during the waning days of the campaign, as he lags behind Democratic rival Joe Biden nationally and by narrow margins in key battleground states. The president has made a flurry of last-minute campaign stops to try and hold on to states he won in 2016, including Pennsylvania, Florida, and North Carolina. Over the weekend, he continued to rail against absentee ballots, frustrated by a Supreme Court ruling that didn't deliver a clear GOP win. Yes, I know, because the legislatures were involved and the federal government can't make laws on state election practices. It's against the Constitution. continuing a months-long push to sow unfounded doubt about potential voter fraud. So, yeah, he's going to go in there. He's going to try and do this up. This whole thing is going to be a mess, and we're not going to have any idea what's happening until at least December, but probably January. All right, let's keep going here. From the Hill, Pelosi says House is prepared to decide president if election results are disputed. From Joseph Choi. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi told NPR on Monday that Congress is prepared to decide the presidential election if the results are disputed. We understand what the law is and the preeminence of the role of Congress, and specifically the House of Representatives, when it comes to counting the votes, Pelosi said in an interview with a public radio station. Should the presidential election not present a clear winner by electoral vote, then it's up to the House to choose the next president. We're ready, we're prepared, we've been ready for a while because we see this irresponsibility of the president, his disrespect for the Constitution, for our democracy, and for the integrity of our elections, so we're ready for him, Pelosi said, because she believes that it goes by simple majority like everything else does in the House. According to the Constitution, under a contested election, it's a vote of House delegation, and House delegation has a landslide victory for Trump. If that's what it comes down to, but yep, this is more fear porn to get more people out to the polls for one way or the other. And that's, I mean, she should be honest. If she wants Democrats to get out to the polls, then she should be honest and say, if this is contested, that means that the House Judiciary, or not the Judiciary Committee, the House delegation votes on the president, and that's heavily Republican. And that would get your people out to the polls. I do think that they're trying to lose this election. I really do at some point. So, we'll see what happens off this. Let's keep going. Got just a few more, and then we'll do Twitter trending for the day. And then head on out of here, getting prepared for the 10-hour stream for election coverage tonight. Hopefully you guys will all be there. We will be taking calls tonight too. So I'll get the Discord in here so you guys can do that. Except I got to put the cursor over here so I can do that. Because I want you guys in here and making calls and asking questions. Alright, let's keep going. From News Channel 3. Judge rules against Governor Gavin Newsom in a lawsuit challenging executive order. State Superior Court judge ruled against Governor Gavin Newsom in a lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of his executive orders. Judge Sarah Heckman ruled that Newsom's executive number N67-20 was indeed unconstitutional. The order required that California residents registered to vote in the November elections receive vote-by-mail ballots. The order also required one voting place per 10,000 residents to be available from October 31st to November 2nd for at least 8 hours. As part of Heckman's ruling, she also issued a permanent injunction preventing Newsom from making further unconstitutional orders. He got his pee-pee slapped. He ran too hard. He tried too hard to make sure that he was the executive and there was no legislature. And he got his pee-pee slapped. I wonder what this has to do, or what this does now for the electric car order that's out there that's also unconstitutional and everything else. And that's good. Separation of powers. We need to separate more powers off of this. Because we have, usually on the left too, it goes both ways, but it's usually on the left. We have all of these politicians that think that they get to become a governor or a president and think that they're kings and gods. Whitmer, Newsom, Pritzker, Evers. Who else is out there? Kamala. We might as well just put that one out there and go with it. Barack. It's usually almost on the left, almost always on the left. And they think that once they're governors, they're gods. And it's high time that a high court in a state gave them the pee-pee slap and knocked them down a peg. All right, let's keep going here. A sign of the times across the U.S. city storefronts boarded up ahead of the election. This is from NPR. NPR, the news station where they read the news like this. And they tell you what the left wants you to hear, but they do it in such a calming fashion that you don't know that you're being lied to and you're taking it away from them. So we should read this just like that because that's the way that they deliver news. But we're not going to read it like that because I've got people that are driving while they're listening to this, and I don't want them to fall asleep and run off the road. And I can't wait to have that first energy drink of the day either, because I'm feeling it right now. This is from Alina Selyuk, I think is how you pronounce that. That's a weird one. Plywood window coverings have blanketed high-end shopping areas of big U.S. cities ahead of Tuesday's election. It's an eerie sight in a country built on the idea of peaceful transition of power. In fact, that kind of signal is exactly why authorities have generally advised business owners not to board up, promising stepped-up security measures. Still, plywood panels are dotting major streets in Boston, New York, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, Chicago, and Washington, D.C. Store owners are on the edge from break-ins during the summer when looters took advantage of a nationwide wave of civil unrest following the police killings of St. George. In the nation's capital, some new boards went up alongside old ones on storefronts that have remained boarded for months now, many sprouting murals, memorials, and graffiti art. Hey look, it's Ginsburg. And a lot of boarding up here. So, I hate to say it. In the cities that they're doing this, now in little small town Wisconsin that I live in, they're not doing this because nothing's going to happen here. But even if we go over to Janesville, they're not doing it over there. Maybe a little bit downtown, but for the most part, they're not doing it there. But in left-run cities like Kenosha, Milwaukee, here in Wisconsin, as well as what we see, Chicago, D.C., Baltimore, oh yeah, they're boarding up here, and they're not boarding up because they think the Trumpsters are going to come out of the country and come into the city and go bust up their windows. They're not boarding it up for that. They anticipate that something's up here. And even we see with some of these other protests that go along here, these people are going to riot whether it's good news or bad news. Look at sports. The Bruins win a hockey game. The Stanley Cup, I think it is. I don't watch hockey. The Bruins win the Stanley Cup. And they beat the shit out of Boston. The Blackhawks win the Stanley Cup and they beat the shit out of Chicago. The Bears win the Super Bowl. And then the Xbox player turns off his Xbox and goes to bed. You thought I was going to go to Chicago with that. I know you did. So yes, they're doing this here. And I got just a couple more off of this one because there are a few other things that go along with this. Boston, we're going to spend a little bit of time on this here. Boston.com. Photos, Boston businesses board up ahead of election. So yeah, we're seeing the people out there in the hazmat suits and the plywood, getting it all boarded up, ready to go. The downtown area of Boston, which you can see all the plywood boards there. Yep, more of that there. The TJ Maxx all boarded up. So yeah, Boston is going, and that, I mean, for me, the fact that I lived just outside of that city for a couple years, that hits me. You can better bet that I'm not going to be anywhere near Madison for the next few days. I don't care what they want me to do. That place is going to be a shit show. Yeah, there's more photos of that one there. All right, next one here from ABC News. This goes on to the government side of things. Non-scalable fencing erected around the White House, stores boarded up for anticipation of election protests. From Michelle Stoddart. Non-scalable fencing will be temporarily installed around the White House perimeter on Monday in advance of potential Election Day protests. Didn't they already have one of those up there during the St. George riots? I thought they already had one up. Maybe they took it down because everything calmed down, but yeah, they're definitely throwing one back up. Additional fencing has already been erected around Lafayette Square across Pennsylvania Avenue from the White House, the location of protests over racial equality in June. The fencing will be temporary and is among other measures being taken in Washington, D.C. and other cities ahead of expected demonstrations, is the word that they're going to go with and use. Many businesses in downtown Washington have boarded up windows in anticipation of violence, as have some in New York City. Yep, there's the Hennepin County Courthouse in Minneapolis. So yeah, it's all over the place. we're going to see some stuff go down and we're going to see some stuff happen. Definitely. Especially if it goes the way that I think that it's going to go. All right, from The Blaze, and I got just 3 more here on this story here, so we'll just spend a little bit of time on those. And then after we read about Twitter, we'll do Twitter trending, and we'll head on out of here. From The Blaze, Twitter will slap a warning label on tweets claiming election results before they're officially declared. From Carlos Garcia, social media giant Twitter previewed a Monday warning label that it will place on tweets that announce the results of the election before official sources declare the results. The policy is meant to undermine the spread of misinformation about election results at a time when President Trump and nominee Biden are warning their supporters about false election results. I wonder if these false announcements will apply to Biden. I do have to wonder that. We may label tweets starting on election night that make claims about election results before they're officially called. We'll be prioritizing the presidential election and other highly contested races where there may be significant issues with misleading information, read a statement from Twitter. Okay, if you are getting your results, your election results from Twitter without verifying them, you shouldn't be voting because you are dumb. Social media and people on social media will try to sway you one way or the other all the time. They'll try to trick you. Verify everything. So yes, if you got your election, we'll watch this here. If you got your election results from Twitter in this election, you are no longer eligible for a ballot ever again because you cannot process information properly. Verify. There are enough outlets out there that will help you verify this. A lot of them are mainstream. A lot of them are NewsGuard certified. But don't take the word of somebody with MAGA on their Twitter handle over on Twitter. All right, let's keep going off of this one here. From the New York Post, Twitter and Facebook add warnings to Trump messages about Pennsylvania voting. From Tamar Lapine. Twitter and Facebook on Monday night added warnings to an election eve message from President Trump called a Supreme Court decision on voting in Pennsylvania very dangerous. The president had bashed the recent ruling, which allowed absentee ballots in the crucial battleground state to be received for 3 days after Election Day. The Supreme Court decision on voting in Pennsylvania is a very dangerous one, Trump wrote in posts on both social media platforms. It will allow rampant and unchecked cheating, the worst cheating, and will undermine our entire system of laws. It will also induce violence in the streets, the worst violence. Something must be done. Twitter quickly added a warning to the president's tweet, writing that some or all of its content is disputed and might be misleading about an election or other civic process. It also restricted users from retweeting or interacting with the message. Facebook, meanwhile, added a label that read, both voting by mail and voting in person have a long history of trustworthiness. In the U.S., voter fraud is extremely rare across voting methods because we have a crystal ball and we know what will happen the first time we use this technology. Trust us, we are Twitter. We will tell you what to think. The social media platform did not restrict engagements with the post, which was shared thousands of times by users. So, yep, they're going to keep slapping. And I mean, Instagram is just warning label after warning label. I had a little bit of insomnia. I woke up at like 2:30 this morning. And I looked at Instagram for a little while before I went back to sleep. But yeah, it was just warning after warning after warning over and over and over again. See information about U.S. elections. See information about U.S. elections. Don't trust this person. See information about U.S. elections. And it was both sides. I'll give them that. Anything that even possibly mentioned the election had a big warning label on it, which it was warning label, warning label, warning label, free post, warning label, warning label, warning label, free post. So, I mean, Instagram is just bad. Warning labels everywhere. It's like looking at the side of a Swift truck with all the warning labels that are there. All right, last one here, and then we will do Twitter trending for the day, which I'm sure is all going to be election stuff. From the NPR, one more time. One more time. Twitter expands warning labels to slow spread of election misinformation. This is from Shannon Bond. All right, and this is a display of what's going to be there. Display name @handle. Some or all of the content shared in this tweet is disputed and may be misleading about how to participate in an election or another civic process. And then he's got something written in Latin, which I was a nerd in high school, but I wasn't that kind of nerd, so I can't read Latin. Maybe we'll get Kaisar to come up here and read it for us. I expect to see more prominent warning labels on Twitter that make it harder to see and share false claims about the election and the coronavirus, the company said on Friday. Well, Maddie said it best last night. Publisher. That's it. That's what they are at this point. They are a publisher. Thank you, Maddie, for that. Because by the time they're putting that up there, that crosses the line. That's publisher. Even with 230 and what it is. You can't deny it anymore. As much as you want to. Publisher. This is the last step that Twitter is taking to prevent the spread of deliberate misinformation as voters cast their ballot amid a pandemic. So the fact that the WHO has changed their mind 17,000 times since March doesn't weigh in on anything, but what somebody with a blue wave in their Twitter handle or a red rose says, that doesn't pass the bar. That doesn't fly. All right. This is the latest step. I read that one already. The social media company will be more aggressively limiting the impact of posts it labels as misleading. Most notably, it will hide tweets with false claims from American political figures, candidates or parties, and other high-profile U.S. users behind warning screens. Other users will have to click past the warnings to read the tweets. And I hate to say this, and I hate to be that conspiracy guy, and this is where we're going to leave off on the news, but I guarantee you this is only going to go one way. Lindsey Graham, Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, people like that are the ones that are going to get hit by this, while Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Nancy Pelosi, and AOC get to continue to spout whatever it is that they want to spout. And that's going to be it for the day here, for the news here. The last thing that we do on Tuesday is Twitter trending. So let's see what's trending over on Twitter right now after it reloads. And after my big thing of notifications. Explore page. Trending. So we will read 5 trendings, but we'll skip everything that says Tuesday Thoughts. Number 1 trending today is hashtag Election Day. Number 2 is Election Day without the hashtag. I will give you a 6th bonus one because they did that shit on me. So that's when we knew that was going to be it. Election Day and hashtag Election Day. Number 3. Okay, how far do we have to skip down before we see anything like this? Number 3 is Go Vote. Number 4 is Election Night. Number 5 is Vote Responsibly. Number 6 is Vote Him Out. Number 7, finally, Little Pump, even though that has more to do with the election. Dude, it is just a wall of election. Tracy Chapman gives a rare performance of talking about a revolution on Late Night with Seth Meyers. Yeah, they're talking about a revolution, all right. Fox and Friends. President Trump calls into Fox and Friends on Election Day, and they said that he called in and he sounded hoarse. Well, he's been doing, what did he do, like 5 rallies yesterday? 2 hours of crack talking the whole time. 866-hour-vote with election protection. Stay in line, because people think that when the polls close, they have to go home. Which, if you lived in a small town, you wouldn't have to worry about. I know how to vote. And there's not going to be a long line for me. There's going to be a line, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to be huge like it is in these left-leaning cities that are closing down polling locations. Keep that in mind, too. That's another thing to watch with this, because they always complain about, well, this state closed polling locations, this place closed polling locations, and it's always in Atlanta or Milwaukee or Chicago or a place like that. That's left run forever. And they decide the election rules. So, and then the last one I'll read today is YMCA, because U.S. President Trump shares a video compilation of himself dancing to the Village People's YMCA on the morning of the U.S. election. So, that's what we have trending for the day. That's going to be it for the show here. We will be back here in approximately, what time is it now? 9? 8:30. So we'll be back here in approximately 7 hours to start the election coverage. We'll be taking calls through the election coverage, calls in. I've got some guests that are ready to chime in, so look forward to them. We'll be taking live chats throughout all of this, so I'll be reading the live chat more actively than I do over on Contemporary. But yeah, it's going to be a big thing. There's going to be a lot of information, a lot of stuff coming in here. Looking forward to seeing everybody in here. Looking forward to the calls. Looking forward to see what you guys have to say about this. But join me here, 4 o'clock Central Time. We're going to run 2 shows, and I want my YouTube people to know this coming in. And I'll let them know at the top of the show there as well. We're going to run 2 shows from 4 to 7:30. Then I'm going to take a break. I'm going to eat some dinner. And that's going to be on all platforms. And then at 8 o'clock Central Time, I'm going to switch over and we're going to start watching the election results roll in, but we're going to do that on DLive only because some of the stuff is going to pop me on YouTube for Wojcicki. So if you don't have a DLive, get on DLive. That's Ed's Blog Twitter is the handle over on DLive. Get on there because that second segment is going to be DLive only so that we don't get shut down for sharing copyrighted materials over on YouTube. But either way, looking forward to seeing you guys there. Looking forward to hanging out with you tonight. A lot of great content creators coming in to hang out with us. I've got a lot of confirmations here, so I think you guys are going to like the lineup. And hopefully we'll get some calls in and we'll get some great information coming from you guys too. But we'll see you then, or we'll see you tomorrow morning to talk about the shit show that this was. And fair warning, I'm going to be exhausted when that happens. But either way, until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.